Dr. Annette Poulsen has spent an incredible 38-year career as a professor of finance at the University of Georgia's Terry College of Business. She's one of the longest tenured professors at the university, and in 2017, she was named the Josiah Meigs Distinguished Professor, the single highest honor at UGA. She even served as the president of the International Finance and Management Association from 2001 to 2002. It's an absolute honor to be joined by her today for this conversation. Dr. Poulsen, thank you so much for your time.
I'm very happy to be here.
Yes. So we're going to get started. So I want to take it back to the beginning. Where did your love and passion for finance and economics come?
I think as a student, you start out trying to figure out what you enjoy in the classroom, right? So I was taking a lot of different classes and I took microeconomics, intermediate microeconomics, and it was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And I think finance and economics are very quantitative based disciplines. And that seems to be something that I have more skill at than some of other things. So I really just, found that I enjoyed taking the courses. I decided to go to graduate school to learn a little bit more and just kind of really fell into this career. It was not that I thought as a young person, I want to be a finance professor. It's just I enjoyed it so much.
Was it a love of money or was it the theory behind it?
That was the theory behind it. You don't go into this kind of career thinking about the money you're going to make, right? Or how other people are making money. It's more based on understanding where the numbers come from and how you use your numbers to your advantage.
Right.
So, and it's helping students learn how to do that.
So it was more like teaching it as a craft that you learned from the beginning.
Yeah, I think so. Teaching is important. And it's just fun. I think it's fun to do.
Yeah,
so.
no, the passion you have for it has always been very paramount as one of your students. But you did spend a little bit of time in industry, correct?
Well, I worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington, D.C., So that was my first job out of graduate school. And it was really a great place to start because you saw the workings of finance from a perspective of the government and how they regulate securities and how CEOs, the Business Roundtable, whoever would come to the SEC and ask for guidance on their decision-making, make the regulations a little bit easier. So it was really very much finding out what was important to the CEOs and the decision makers in corporations and helping them understand how the securities laws and regulations impacted them.
What was your role there? Because that's one thing when I was looking up your resume, I was like, oh, she worked at the SEC. That's so cool.
I was a research economist. So basically it was bringing economic analysis to the regulatory issues of the commission. I started out as a research economist. And by the time I left, I was Deputy Chief Economist and Acting Chief Economist when the Chief Economist left us. So I had already committed to the job at UGA when I became acting chief economist. So I called up the department head here and said, this is an amazing opportunity. Do you mind if I take an extra year? And it worked out that it was just a year where I was totally involved in commission decisions, going to all of the department head meetings and that sort of thing, and being key to a lot of regulatory change.
So you're deputy chief economist at the SEC. You're on a track to be a very high level government official effectively. In the financial sector, what made you decide to switch and go into teaching?
At some point, you don't want to work in government, right? At some point, you want to come back and do research. You're much more it's much more self-determination what you're going to do your research on. At the SEC, we were, given projects that we had to do. When you come back into a research environment like a major university, you have the opportunity to investigate things that you think are interesting, do good research, get good research published, and bring that to students and make it clear for students what's going on in the regulatory world also, in the financial world also.
Oh, very cool. So you decide to come to the University of Georgia. What was your first role? And I would love, and you can take all the time you want on this, I would just love to just kind of hear your process. Where did you start and how did you become the current professor?
Well, I started as an assistant professor. So we were on the other side of campus in a relatively small building. We're now in 7 buildings down here. It's really amazing how the business school has grown, the Terry College. It was a relatively very traditional college when I first got here. Over time, as many business schools have, it has become much more of a career center, a place where you can change your career outcomes, a place where faculty are much more involved in what's going on in the real world. And instead of bringing you these models that some mathematician developed, we're bringing you what's really going on. And we have a lot more speakers. We have a lot more opportunities to see what business is like. And I think that's been a major change in the university. For me, over time, I've probably gone from less of a textbook communicator as opposed to here's what's happening in the finance world. I've tried to bring, and you can contradict me, but I try to bring current events into the classroom, make sure that we're talking about current topics and the way practitioners are looking at what we're learning in business schools. It's been fun. It's been important to me to be a good teacher. For faculty, we have a 3-pronged mission. One is teaching, one is research, and one is service. And I hope that I've done all 3 well at the university, but over time you get more involved in service. I was department head for 10 years. I've been on untold number of committees, been on search committees for deans, search committees for the provost, all that sort of thing. So it's, I've just been involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
One of the highlights of my service commitment was being on the UGA Athletic Association board.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, which was pretty cool because you're right there with Kirby Smart and hearing about all the decisions that are being made. Do we need, new recreation facilities? Do we need we're building a new track center out on Millage right now and be right there in the middle of it all. So that's been fun.
You calculate the cash flows to make sure the project made sense.
Luckily, we just had to vote yes or no. But of course,
we're doing that in class right now.
It's important to recognize that Kirby Smart is a finance major from the University of Georgia,
Yeah.
and he did play on our softball team. And we won the championship when he was on the softball team. Yeah.
Lovely. One thing I actually do think you do an excellent job of is keeping things relevant.
I hope so.
So many
Thank
of
you.
our classes start with you saying, hey, this is something that's going on. The SEC made this decision. The Fed is changing interest rates. And not only do you make those, class questions sometimes, but it adds a level of discussion and it excites me because as someone who is really interested in more of the marketing, more of the strategy side, I don't expect to do a lot of direct finance work
Right.
in my role. But you've been able to really show me in your class a different way of thinking. And
Right.
every time I see a business making a decision, especially, I used to think of it as very much as a P&L. It's like,
Yeah.
well, is that going to make money? But you've really taught us to think much more long-term about how much
Okay.
is this going to cost now and how do things look in the future. That's one thing I really wanted to give you a compliment on. One thing we've been asking all of the professors, and I'm really interested in your perspective because you've seen a lot of it, is, with the current and ever-changing economy and the increasing number of people going to school, break down what you think the current economics are of getting an MBA today. And how do you think it's changed since you started? And do you still think it makes a lot of sense financially?
I think it's up to the individual,
Of course.
right? Of course. It depends where you are in your career. So I've taught the on-campus MBA. I've taught the executive MBAs who are a little bit older and a little bit more established in their careers. And there's differences, right? For them, they're staying in their jobs for the most part and going to school on the weekends. But for the on-campus MBAs, I think the students are making a decision about pivoting, right? And that they may have a good job. They may be happy in that job, but they're thinking about, I want to do something a little bit different, or I want to expand my opportunity set. And by doing that, I can hopefully increase my income. And I think that our data show that that our students are on average doing quite well in their return on investment. But it also lets you go to what you'd rather do, right?
Right.
So often you take the first job out of college and you're making progress, but it's not really what you want to do. So I think the MBA is important as a career modifier. I don't want to say changer, but modifier. Even if you go back to the same area, bringing a different set of skills, you're broader based. The MBA is a general degree and you're learning not just finance, you're learning marketing and strategy and statistics. And you're bringing all of those skills back to the work environment where you can say, I can do a lot more than what I used to be able to do.
Yeah. And even a few months in, I've really seen that. And I really hope that, will benefit, the right company at the end of this. But yeah, I've done the math myself many times before joining this program. And I think specifically at UGA, we have such a good financial base, especially for some of our in-state students. And I think we have such a good networking program that I think the relative outcomes are very strong financially. Here's a fun question that I wanted to ask you. If you weren't doing this, if tomorrow you were told, nope, no more teaching, but you got to work for another 10 years, what would you do?
That's interesting. So it depends what salary I'd have to make.
Salary's not a problem.
Salary's not a problem.
Salary's not a problem.
I'd probably look for something in either helping people or animals. I'm a big dog and cat lover. So every day I drop off my dog at daycare and I think I could do this job. They're just with the dogs all day long. So that would be fun. But in terms of an alternative career,
Right.
that would be fun. But a career, I don't have a good answer. I mean, I really, people ask me what I like about teaching. What I like about teaching is that the people I'm around are 20 if they're undergraduates, they're 25 if they're MBAs, 35 if they're exec MBAs. It's just, it's fun to always be around young people because
Right.
you're always seeing that young perspective. I was telling the class today that last year I went to the Taylor Swift concert. Right now, at my age, most people don't. I felt I went by myself and I looked around and I thought, I am the oldest person here. But it was fun,
Right.
and it was just like, and I wouldn't have known anything about it if I wasn't surrounded by 20 to 25-year-olds all the time. Just had a good time.
Keeps you young. Speaking of things that are young and fresh and
Okay.
changing, is obviously a very hot topic. Has it had any impact on your perspective on teaching?
It's clearly changing everything. So from the student perspective, it's giving them shortcuts. We can't ignore that shortcuts are valuable in the real world. Learning shortcuts are valuable, but you don't want to give up the depth of your understanding either. So that's something from the student perspective. We need to make sure that students are being challenged to think, not just use AI, right? So that's something that is in process. From the professor point of view, my gosh, I can learn so much, right?
Yeah.
If I need an example I've taught in the at Oxford University in the UK program, and I wanted to say, what are 5 international mergers more than, $500 million in the last 5 years? And well, I could spend some time searching for that, or I can go to ChatGPT and say, tell me 5 international mergers. And obviously you have to check the data and make sure that it's correct.
But the framework.
But it gives you this help, and it just helps you make things more interesting. But it's a way to find out information quickly. So it's just like, 30 years ago when I started, or 38 years ago, whatever you pointed out, we used tables, to these mathematical tables to compute time value of money. And the transition to using business calculators was like 5 to 10 years. And we had them. And why weren't we using them? Why were we making students do things the slow way rather than using the tool? So it's so important to use the tool, learn how to use the tool, and learn it efficiently.
Right. No, and I think, one of the biggest misconceptions I get from people who aren't in school, they say, I feel like school is just teachers making tests with AI and then students taking them with AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's, a really big misconception, at least here at UGA's program. I think they do a really good balance of understanding that these are tools you're going to use in the real world, but it can't be a crutch. You still need to understand the theory, and you need to know how to check to make sure that the information you're getting is correct.
Right. And professors spend a lot of time talking about assessment, and the best way to make sure that students are doing the work as opposed to relying on AI. And it pretty much comes down personal interviews, personal interactions, on-paper tests in a secure situation.
Right.
It's just that's what we have to do.
Yeah, because who knows the information.
Yeah.
100%. My final question is this. In your amazing tenure as a professor, what's been the most rewarding part of it all?
It's the students. It's without a doubt. It's, that you get to know a different set of students every year. They come back. I have yet to have somebody come back and say their parent was in my class. So, but
getting close?
Getting close. Certainly is possible. So, so a good friend from when, probably 25 years ago, her daughter is coming in next year. So maybe she'll be in my class. But but it's really the students. Dr. Netter and I, my husband is also on the faculty. We had the opportunity to put one of the bricks out in the yard out there. And we talked about what to put on it. And we put, thank you, students. Us, that's what it's all about.
Well, as a student, I would like to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
You've been an incredible professor, and it's been an honor to learn from you.
Thank you.
I know a lot of my classmates feel the same way.
It's a great class. Every class is the best class, but you guys have the best class.
We are the best class.